Wolf Blitzer spoke to Dianne Feinstein about the recently released torture report. I chopped this up for you so you can see all of Wolf's questions. See if you could catch the media strategy here in responding to the torture report, and then I'll come back and explain it.
So what do you make of all this concern, U.S. military going on a higher state around the world? Here at home, the Department of Homeland Security, the FBI are warning all law enforcement, be on the lookout, no specific threat yet. Was it worth it to release this report today if, in fact, American lives, whether diplomats, military personnel, civilians, are going to be in danger? But if Americans are killed as a result of this report, and they tell you that, I assume you would feel guilty about that. When the Department of Defense issues a warning saying thousands of Marines are now being put on a higher state of alert around the world in advance of the release of this report, when the Department of Homeland Security and the FBI issue a joint statement going out to all law enforcement authorities across the United States, be on a higher state of alert. CNN is not releasing those statements. We're just reporting what the Pentagon and the Department of Homeland Security and the FBI are telling law enforcement and military personnel around the world. That's their words, not ours. Right,
Do you
Senator?
have a question? Do you have a question?
I just wanted to point out that this is
you
what...
You have pointed it out, Wolf,
all right,
three times.
This is something that not only is Wolf Blitzer doing, most in the mainstream media are doing it. Did you catch it? Instead of talking about the torture report itself and having the conversation about torture, what they're doing is they're talking about the response to the torture report. This way, what you can do is deflect from having to have the serious discussion about the Constitution and international law and our collective morality and the Republican responsibility for it, because it started under Bush and Cheney, and possible prosecutions and all that stuff. You don't need to talk about that if you only talk about the response to the report. This is something that it's an old trick. In fact, this was the exact trick that Fox News used all the time back during 2005, 2006, the height of the Iraq War, when they started doing the surge. What they would do is they wouldn't talk about the war itself. They would talk about people talking about the war. So if a Democrat said something like, you know, this is a bad idea, too many civilians are dying, on Fox News they would go, oh, you're calling the brilliant, brave American soldiers terrorists because they're killing civilians in Iraq. So note the trick. They don't actually have a conversation about the actions that took place and the substance. You talk about other people talking about it. So now what Wolf Blitzer is doing, he's just a stenographer for power. He's like, well, the CIA and the FBI and the people who were responsible for torture are telling us that we shouldn't release the torture report. No, really? You don't say. I wonder why they would be against releasing the torture report. Could it be because it shows how bad they acted? No, it couldn't be that. It has to be for genuine security reasons. Well, Wolf, if you really want to take that line, be consistent. Say, hey, when we released the Pentagon Papers after the Vietnam War, we shouldn't have done that. We don't have the right to know that U.S. soldiers used napalm and Agent Orange and killed civilians and torched villages in Vietnam. Just be consistent. Say, I also don't think that we have the right to know that in Iran, the U.S. toppled the government in 1953 and put in a puppet government so we can continue to get the oil from the region. If you want to take that line, Wolf, be consistent. Just say, across the board, I want to live in an authoritarian state where the government can do whatever it wants, even if the people don't want it to do X, Y, or Z, and then they could lie about it. I want them to have no rules governing them whatsoever, and then they can lie about it and not tell us what they did with our money in our name. Look, your job in the media is to discuss the facts of the situation. And Wolf Blitzer did everything but that. Notice he's saying, do you think that this is going to hurt Americans overseas? Well, the conversation you should be having is, wow, look at some of these torture methods we did. Rectal feeding, which is they shove a tube up your ass and pump food in there. That's basically rape. So state-sanctioned rape. They would break people's feet and their legs and make them stand for hours. They did waterboarding. They did sleep deprivation for up to 180 hours, which I didn't even know was possible. They did hypothermia. They played loud music for extended periods of time where they drove the people crazy. People died. We know they tortured 26 innocent people at least, because that's just what they admit to. And what's Wolf Blitzer's response? Well, do you think that maybe we shouldn't ever release this information because something, national security, something? You're pathetic. Do you believe in a free press or not? Apparently he doesn't. He doesn't. He's part of the press, but he doesn't believe in a free press, which is exactly why he has that job on air in the middle of the day in CNN, and exactly why they expanded his role recently, even though he's a robot and he's unentertaining, because he will make sure to play the 50-50 game no matter what. You can't talk about the torture because that says Republicans are really bad and they violated all these laws and that's terrible and they should be prosecuted. Don't talk about that, but of course Wolf Blitzer can find an angle to make it 50-50, where he says, let's talk about the response to the torture. Democrats say this, Republicans say that. Dianne Feinstein, what's your response? A corporate robot, if I've ever seen one. He's terrible at his job. He has no clue what he's doing, which is why he's in that position.